I should have listened to the warnings. They said the old Pinhust Asylum was cursed, plagued by the restless souls of the tormented patients who had lived and died within its decaying walls. But I was arrogant, dismissing the local legends as nothing more than small-town superstition. How I wish I could go back and heed those ominous words. The nightmares that took root that night will haunt me until my dying day. It started out as a dare, as so many ill-fated adventures do. A group of friends and I, bored and reckless in our teenage invincibility, decided to explore the infamous abandoned asylum after weeks of daring each other to make the trek. Countless stories circulated about Pinhust, ghastly tales of patient abuse, archaic and barbaric procedures, even murmurs of occult practices conducted in the dank basement chambers. Undeterred by the ghoulish rumors, we parked our cars in a deserted lot near the looming edifice and crept through a hole in the rusted fence under a moonless night sky. The abandoned hospital grounds were shrouded in inky darkness, the only illumination provided by our flashlight beams cutting through the gloom. An eerie silence hung in the air, a silence that should have dissuaded us from venturing any further. But we were young and foolish, fueled by adrenaline and a cavalier disregard for our own safety. So we pressed onwards towards the asylum's main building, the beam of my flashlight bouncing erratically across crumbling walls, shattered windows, and piles of rubble strewn about the overgrown grounds. As we neared the entrance, an overwhelming sense of dread washed over me, a primitive instinct screaming at me to turn back while I still could. The air felt thick and oppressive, carrying with it the musty stench of decay. Somewhere in the distance, I could have sworn I heard faint laughter echoing through the shadows, high-pitched and deranged. "Did you guys hear that?" I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. The others brushed it off as the wind, or perhaps a stray animal scurrying through the underbrush. But I knew better. That laughter carried an unmistakable tone of human madness. Swallowing hard, I followed my friends through a gaping hole where the asylum's front doors once stood, the rusted hinges groaning in protest. The dim beams of our flashlights could scarcely cut through the impenetrable darkness that consumed the foyer. Debris and garbage were strewn about the cracked tile floor, evidence of the trespassers and urban explorers who had undoubtedly passed through before us. My heart pounded in my ears as we fanned out, our lights scanning the decrepit surroundings. That's when I noticed it, a faded institutional sign hanging askew on the wall, its peeling white paint just barely visible. Pathological insane ward. A tremor of fear lanced through me at those chilling words. My mind conjured visions of straitjackets, padded cells, endless screams echoing through shadowy corridors. "Guys, I don't think we should be here," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. But my friends had already ventured deeper into the asylum, paying no heed to my apprehensions. Cursing under my breath, I hurried to catch up, the darkness closing in around me like a smothering blanket. The farther we delved, the more palpable the sense of dread became. At one point, I could have sworn I saw a hunched, emaciated figure dart across an adjacent hallway, out of the corner of my eye. When I shined my light towards the source of the movement, it was as if the darkness had swallowed whatever specter lurked there, whole. We continued our exploration, venturing up to the upper floors and bearing witness to the remnants of the lives once contained within these cracked, plaster walls. Rusted cribs and bed frames, tattered patient robes, even decaying medical supplies and antiquated restraints. Then, we made our way down a decrepit stairwell that emptied into a dank, underground hallway, the air thick with a putrid, unsettling mustiness. A series of heavy steel doors lined the corridor at intervals, their purposes clear even after decades of disrepair. These were the solitary confinement chambers. Against my better judgment, I felt compelled to investigate one of the solitary confinement cells. An unearthly force seemed to beckon me forward, as if something malevolent and incredibly ancient stirred in the musty shadows. The steel door was ajar, rust and mold streaking its surface like veins across desiccated flesh. A foul stench, reminiscent of decaying meat and bodily waste, wafted outwards as I drew nearer. My hands shook violently as I grasped the freezing door handle. "Tyler, don't," one of my friends hissed. "There's something not right about this place." But it was too late. An unseen force propelled the door open, with a sickening groan of metal on metal. The smell that billowed outwards nearly caused me to retch, a thick, overpowering melange of rot, decay, and inhumanity. My light pierced the gloom of the minuscule cell, revealing a horror that will be seared into my mind until the day I perish. Huddled in the corner, a desiccated husk of what was once a man stared back at me with hollow, gore-encrusted sockets. His body was emaciated to the point of grotesquerie, his leathery skin pulled taut against protruding bones. Tattered remains of a straitjacket clung to his withered frame. But most disturbing of all were the deep furrows seared into the concrete floor surrounding the body, evidence that this poor soul had clawed at the ground until his fingers were whittled to bone stumps. I recoiled in terror, choking on panicked sobs and struggling not to vomit. My friends' screams pierced the putrid air as they, too, bore witness to the grisly sight. We fled, half-blinded by our own panic, sprinting back towards the stale moonlight of the asylum's entrance. It was as we neared the shattered threshold to freedom that the true horror began to unfold. A deafening clang of metal on rock caused us to skid to a halt as the bulking form of a steel door slammed shut, sealing the entrance with an air of sickening finality. We spun around in confusion and horror to see that every exit had been barred, leaving us entombed within the asylum's dank recesses. What's happening?" Jenna cried, her voice pitching upwards into hysterics. That's when the cacophony began, a deafening crescendo of maddened shrieks and bestial howls reverberated from every shadowed corner. It felt as if the very walls reverberated with the anguished screams of the damned. We huddled together, swinging our feeble lights in futile arcs, the world dissolving into a kaleidoscope of stroboscopic illumination and abyssal blackness. Shapes appeared to lurk in the encroaching gloom. Just beyond our light, humanoid forms contorted into postures of agony and torment, mouths agape in endless, voiceless screams. A hoarse, gurgling cackle cut through the pandemonium. One by one, our lights flickered and died, submerging us into total, impenetrable darkness. The deranged laughter grew louder, echoing from every direction until it felt as if it originated from within my own mind. Icy tendrils of terror lanced down my spine as something caressed the back of my neck, a thing beyond the descriptors of human language. It slithered and contorted with the consistency of molten wax, yet radiated a cold, viscous chill that sapped the very warmth from my soul. I awoke to the blinding glare of a naked bulb hanging from the ceiling, its sickly yellow luminance casting harsh shadows throughout the cramped chamber. My friends were bound beside me, gagged and whimpering through tear-streaked eyes. Looming in the corner was a hunched, spindly figure shrouded in tattered robes, its form seemingly unbound from the physical constraints of our reality. As it turned towards me, I glimpsed its face, if one could call that blasphemous visage a face. A rictus of cracked, desiccated flesh stretched over a perpetual, silently howling maw, devoid of any human features besides soulless pits where eyes should have been. The entity's lipless mouth contorted, unleashing a telepathic shriek that detonated within the deepest recesses of my psyche, tearing apart the very fabric of my sanity. The world of men belongs to the forgotten. We reside in the spaces between reality, lurking in the darkest recesses of the insane. You have breached the sanctuary of our sacred torment. My mind reeled, teetering on the precipice of oblivion, as the entity's words wormed their way into the core of my being. I thrashed against my bonds, a futile gesture fueled by rapture and mortal desperation. The thing seemed to drink in my fear, reveling in my spiraling descent into madness. It drifted closer, its fetid robes slithering across the stained floor, as if carried by an unseen current. For eons we have lingered, cursed to haunt the spaces where reason frays and sanity withers. Its telepathic monologue echoed with a reverberating chorus of countless tortured voices. This place, crafted by your kind as a temple to our anguish, is where we are permitted dominion over the fabric of reality itself. A bony, desiccated appendage snaked out from the tattered folds of its robe, a clawed finger tracing the line of my jaw. I shuddered at its icy caress, all cognitive function crumbling beneath the entity's otherworldly influence. We thirst for the life essence of the sane, the fuel that allows us to persist in our eternal lamentations. Your torment will sustain us for an eternity. Its mouth unhinged in a way that defied the natural laws of anatomy, lower jaw distending inhumanly wide, to reveal layers of serrated fangs glistening with a vile, viscous drool. A chorus of maddened howls pierced the air, as other unspeakable forms began materializing from the gloom. I unleashed a guttural scream, raw and animalistic, as the nightmarish creatures descended upon us, their deformities and contortions burning into my shattered psyche. I must have blacked out from the traumatic deluge, for my next lucid memory was of drifting, bodiless, through a formless realm of eternal insanity. Lost souls flickered at the periphery of my perception, shredded faces frozen in perpetual torment, their ceaseless wails and deranged gibbering merging into a dementia-inducing cacophony. Reality itself seemed to shudder with every passing whisper, the very rules that govern existence fraying and fluctuating like a dying flame. I have no concept of how long, or if, I endured this maddening existence. Seconds, years, eons, it all bled together into a singular, unending purgatorial now. When I finally regained some semblance of self, I found myself huddled in a ball outside the asylum's rusted gates, the first rays of dawn's light cresting over the horizon. My friends were gone. Their fates remain a harrowing mystery, one I am too traumatized and horror-stricken to ponder. To this day, I remain gripped in the throes of a hallucinatory, waking dream, my grip on reality tenuous at best.